I think we have Eric Engels joining us
There he
here.
is.
He'll have a little bit more info on some of these things that we've talked about. I was just chatting with the guys about Phillip Danault. Eric, what are you hearing on that front? Is it a pizza issue? What's going on with Phillip Danault and his future with the Habs or without the Habs?
I think it's a pricing issue. It's a future issue. It's about what Phillip Danault wants. And he wants a role where he's not going to be pigeonholed as a third-line center. He is capable of producing more. I think a lot of people looked at him and said he can't score. I mean, he has been a guy that's produced upwards of 40 points every season. And if you put him with some better players, he can produce more than that. He's not going to be a goal scorer, that's for sure. But he can set guys up. And from the defensive standpoint, you know, you look at the contracts that were signed by Adam Lowry and Radek Faksa, and I think the Canadiens were trying to get him down to a better option that would enable them to grow with Phillip Danault while they've got Nick Suzuki and Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Jake Evans and Ryan Poehling. And, you know, inevitably his role would diminish a little bit and he'd be paid, you know, well for what he's doing with the Canadiens. But there's some other teams out there, you know, look at the Columbus Blue Jackets maybe, that could really use a centerman of Phillip Danault's quality. And I think the appeal of the market is too strong right now, and that's where he's going to go.
All right, let's talk Carey Price.
Not to Columbus, but to the market. Sorry.
Sure. No, that's okay. How about Carey Price? Obviously, he's been a huge talking point since everyone found out that he was going to be left unprotected by the Montreal Canadiens. Now reports are saying he will not be selected by the Seattle Kraken. At this point, obviously, Montreal's gamble has paid off for their franchise goaltender. What do you make of what's transpired the last few days on that front?
Well, I think it was a really strong calculation on Marc Bergevin's part. He obviously felt as though the Seattle would view too much risk in this player, if only for the fact that they weren't going to have the full picture on his injury situation before making their pick. And there was already some risk associated, right? He's got to be paid $44 million. He's turning 34 in a month. He just played exceptional in the playoffs, but has had some spotty play in the regular season over the last 4 seasons. That contract is not going to get better by the day. You know, and that's with respect to Carey Price, who I still think is one of the best goaltenders in the world, if not the top guy. So, you know, I think Marc Bergevin said to himself, hey, you know, I'm not going to give you something so I can protect Jake Allen, and I need Jake Allen if it's going to work well with Carey Price. And him and Carey Price made a calculation here that worked out. Now they need to know from doctors how serious the injuries are that Price is dealing with. They're hoping it's not too seriously. He'll be back soon enough, if not for the start of the NHL regular season. But we won't know until Price meets with the specialists on Thursday in New York and his hip and his knee get checked out further. And we also won't know potentially until he goes under the knife if he needs surgery, because sometimes they go in there and there's something else that needs fixing.
All right, well, time will tell on that front. It's a good thing they also have Jake Allen. Let's look ahead a little bit here. Obviously, we have the expansion draft tonight. We got the NHL draft coming up on Friday and Saturday. But in terms of free agency, who do you think Marc Bergevin and his staff might be eyeing here on the free agent market?
Well, at the risk of getting radioed here, because we're still a week away and there's so much going on and there's so much we don't know. We're going to speak to Marc Bergevin on Thursday. He's going to give us an update on Shea Weber's situation, hopefully, on Carey Price's situation, on Jonathan Drouin's situation. Obviously, Phillip Danault, as we were talking about, is on his way to free agency. There's a lot of holes that he's going to have to consider filling here, and whether or not he does it through free agency or trade, or at all, or just graduating younger players and trusting them to do the job is up in the air right now. I think, you know, he will try to fill some of those holes, and I think he's got some great options available to him and a lot of money to play with. I look at a guy like Rasmus Ristolainen in Buffalo and say to myself, with a year left on his contract at a reasonable cap hit, maybe the Canadiens have the assets that Buffalo would be looking for. They certainly have a lot of picks coming up in the draft. A guy like Dougie Hamilton is going to obviously be associated to Montreal. I'm not saying I'm hearing anything necessarily that the Canadiens are going to sign him, but when you have Shea Weber potentially sidelined indefinitely and his money potentially going to the long-term IR for a long time, obviously Dougie Hamilton is the marquee free agent on the right side and a possibility. So I don't know if he'd be interested in coming to Montreal, but I would think the Canadiens would be interested in him. And up front, you know, they have to be looking for some dynamic scoring power, whether it's a guy like Mike Hoffman, whose name has surfaced at different times, to different players that might be available, whether it's Patrick Laine in Columbus. Is he going to stay there? Is he settled in? I think the Canadiens are going to be poking into a lot of dossiers here. And as much as we'd like it to be a bit more of a quiet offseason in Montreal, as reporters, I get the feeling we're going to be working quite a bit.
Yeah, make sure you have your phone charger standing by at all times, because it's going to be a busy one for you, my friend. And you must not be coming to us from your home today, because there's no artwork on display. I feel like that's a given with you, but we'll let it slide this one time.
We're discussing a new plan for rotation, so
okay, wonderful.
I had to go blank today.
All right, well, fair enough. Listen, you enjoy the expansion draft tonight and the draft coming up at the end of the week, and we'll be chatting.
Thanks, Jackie. I wonder who they're going to take.
I know. It's going to be such a surprise.